Welcome to Lifestories. Today we've got one of the most inspiring young people that I know, one of my best friends, Steven Gehrke. No, he's not actually homeless. He just likes to dress that way on his day off. And we'll go ahead and let you start off, Gehrke. Tell people what's going on with your life right now. What do you do and everything?
I'm currently working at Skyway Buick GMC, running the dealership, trying to make everything happen and build a brand in Joplin.
What's your title?
Executive manager.
So that's a big boss. He does what he wants.
I wish.
No, I mean, you're living a great life. You got a beautiful wife and kids. You got a couple of them. And I mean, you go to all the concerts everywhere. You're all over the country, dude. You go everywhere.
Try to.
You get to see everything. You're living a great life at 28. I mean, this kid's accomplished everything. And I truly think he's inspiring, but life hadn't always been like that, right?
No, not at all.
So, let's start out. Where were you born?
Born in Joplin, Missouri.
Okay, back in 2004?
No, 91. 1991.
91, he was born in Joplin. And then I'm trying to get to what made you become who you are and what molded you. So, what's the first memory you can remember? The earliest.
That's such a hard question. I don't know. I mean, there's a ton of them, obviously, from childhood and stuff like that. But it's gonna be, man. Probably just going to school. Elementary school, somewhere in there. That'd probably be really the earliest I can remember. You know.
You don't remember.
It was such a fast-paced childhood.
You don't have one exact memory that stands out as your first memory?
I remember getting my grandma, Pat, took me out to get a bicycle for my birthday, and she was terrible at surprises. So she took me to Sears, and we looked at bikes, and picked out this blue bike, and the whole 9 yards, and I was like, yeah, if I got a birthday present, I'd want this blue bike right here. She's like, okay, cool. But we're not getting it, classic grandma surprise, So, go home. I'm like, obviously, I'm not getting the bike. Well, then the bike shows up, delivered at the house, and I'm like, oh, I got the bike. She's like, but you weren't expecting that. It's the bike we picked out together, So, that was a pretty big memory right there. Especially growing up, getting a cool bike. I think everybody probably deals with that at some point in life.
And that's awesome, man. So you ended up getting what you wanted. That's one of the first memories. That's cool. So then from there, how old were you think?
I was probably 9, 10 years old, somewhere in there. Maybe a little bit younger.
What's your earliest memory? It was 4 years ago. No, what kind of kid were you think? Childhood?
Pretty, I kind of kept to myself for the most part, I didn't like going out and I'd go hang out with friends and stuff, but it wasn't I wasn't roaming the streets of the neighborhood or riding my bike to the other side of the world, I definitely wasn't doing that. A lot of it was having overprotective parents in the 90s, which I think a lot of people my age can really relate to. It was just, the whole world was getting really crazy in that point in time. So, it wasn't you could just go out. It was the start of, you can't just let your kids go outside and play, that whole movement. So, really just kind of figured out how to stay inside and just kind of become one with myself, I guess.
Well, let's try to get a little deeper. Let's get in, so around then you're 10, 11 years old, so you got to be, this is about the time you got your first boyfriend or your first girlfriend.
No, my mom would have killed me. You know what I mean? She would have been no, you're done, man.
Okay, so you're going to middle school then.
Yeah, we went to, started at Jefferson in Joplin. And then in 5th grade, we moved to Carl Junction. So it was spring break of 5th grade, we moved over there. So we lived there for a while, kind of getting acclimated. But from there, that's pretty much what, I graduated from Carl Junction, so.
Was it any kind of culture shock or anything?
Yeah, a lot from Joplin to Carl. A lot different, it just, It was so. I mean, the school I went to was in the ghetto. You know what I mean? The ghetto of Joplin, I guess you'd say. And then you go to Carl Junction, and it's like, oh, we got to step up our game a little bit. You know, like
Everybody's got to get golf clubs and that kind of thing.
yeah, that never happened. It did not happen.
But so okay,
We tried, but it didn't happen.
Okay, so around that time, and you got, I mean, anything major? I mean, everybody's got something major happen somewhere around that time in their life. Anything that stands out?
Major. I mean, there's a lot of probably major to me at that time, but not really as much now. You know, started to like get very rebellious, like, in a way. You know what I mean? Just trying to be myself, and like everybody's like, no, no, don't do it. You know,
Don't be you.
yeah, don't be you. You know, that happened a lot. So
But you didn't. So that's when you ended up joining the gang and
yeah,
that kind of thing.
yeah, went to prison. Did not go to prison.
I'm new at this, so cut me a break. I'm trying to figure out, like, there had to be some big moments in your life, somewhere in there in your teenage years that made you this kind of crazy, motivated person, you know?
A lot of it was watching my mom, for the most part. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, like I started out, my mom got pregnant at a young age, and then my biological dad had nothing to do with anything, still doesn't, like, never plan on meeting him, you know, one of those situations where she stepped in and filled the mom and dad role for a long time. So whenever you see that growing up, I mean, that really makes you want to push even harder. I mean, that's not something, like a lot of people there, like, oh, how do I work harder? Like, you have to see somebody work harder than you and like do the unthinkable to really even start to think you can do it yourself. You know, like people have like, they like bodybuilders, they look at like Arnold and they're like, oh man, this guy's jacked. Like, I want to be like that, you know? Like, that was my Arnold, you know, it was my mom watching her do that. And then my dad came in the picture that adopted me in the long run, that gave me the Gehrke last name. And, you know, he was also the same way. Like, they'd work multiple jobs. My dad was going to college, you know, when we were kids. So you'd be like, hey, let's go, like, play baseball or something like that. And he's like, no, I'm tired. You know, and it's like, I get it now. But as a kid, I didn't, you know. So you kind of see, like, your immediate family being, like, a workhorse. And you're like, that's life. You know, like, you're going to have to work like this. That was... You know, they came from a very broke environment, both of them, you know, like very low class environment for the most part. And they had to build everything they had. So we're like, as you grow up seeing that, like, hey, I've got to push because that's how life is. You're from a year old to 18, you know, that's like you graduate high school and you're like, hey, let's get to work, you know, like you can't just sit around. That's not the expectation.
And then, like, in that time, I mean, going through that, like, how did that make you feel? Like, I mean, did that make you more rebellious or less rebellious, you know, having been adopted, per se?
They were, yeah, I mean, the adopted part, no. I mean, that was, like, a lot of, like, hate and, like, hey, let me prove you wrong, you know? Because I feel like a lot of people have a lot of stuff to prove other people wrong of, like, they may be known as like a bad person, or they may have like a prison past, or whatever the situation may be. They may be a drug addict, and then they have to prove to everybody so much that they're not that person, you know. So it really pushed me to like say like, hey, this dumbass still lives with his parents in Joplin somewhere, and I'm like, no, I'm good, you know. Like, I'll never be that person, you know. I'll be 100 times better than that situation. So.
I mean, do you feel any kind of void at all there? Because, you know, there's other family members around that maybe you don't know or haven't got to know?
Yes and no. I mean, there's a part where it's like, why want to be around somebody that never wanted to be around you? You know, so to me, in my head, in my heart, it's like that part I would want no relationship with my biological dad. But if there were like any other family members out there, I mean, I've never, they didn't necessarily do anything wrong. You know what I mean? So I guess that'd be my outtake on it. You know, like it's never been anything I put a ton of thought towards because it's just a part of life that you kind of just push away in a sense, you know?
I'm just surprised that it didn't, like, it doesn't make you feel like you should go out and look for these people or anything, just to meet them or know them or anything. It's just kind of, you just kind of wiped it all.
No, I mean, like whenever you have I've always stuck to like my gut feeling on like, not necessarily negative situations, but situations that you're just uncomfortable with. Like, I mean, everybody's got a ton of friends everybody deals with so much. Like my problems aren't worse than anybody else's. You know, they may be worse than somebody else's, but they're not the worst problems in the world. Yeah. But any bad situation you have, like, I've just always steered to the side of don't hang out with people that make you feel bad. Don't, surround yourself with people that make you feel good in life and you start feeling better. I mean, happiness is an inside job, but at the same time, like, if you're around 20 negative people at your work every day, you start to be negative,
Right.
If you're around 20 people at a positive work environment or a home situation or whatever the situation may be, you're positive. Like positive families, there's always positive people in them, so that's really what you have to steer towards is eliminating negativity, anything that just doesn't make you feel good. And I've always done that.
Right. But I mean, I think there have been a lot of things in your life that have hurt you. You've gone through hardships and stuff, just like, I mean, everybody
Absolutely.
has. And that's where I'm trying to get to. Because, I mean, look, I'm not going to be happy. Viewers aren't going to be happy until we see you cry.
I'm not crying.
I mean, there's nothing like a homeless guy crying. No, I mean, like, there was something. Who was your first girlfriend? Listen.
Oh, man.
Had to be somewhere in there. Yeah.
First real girlfriend. A girl named Paige when I moved to, actually, I mean, that'd be like first real girlfriend, Of course, you have like the kindergarten and first grade, like swing set lovers, But that would have been really the first time right there, 6th grade.
Did she break your heart?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. That was 6th grade. I'm sure that happened,
So the 6th grade. Okay, so now you told me. Okay, so 6th grade you got to be like 12, right?
Yeah,
okay.
12, 13, something
And
like
then little Paige, wherever you are out there, you just crush this guy. Look at him. I mean, he's still hurt from
distraught.
She's probably gonna like give one of the.
No, I was actually talking to her husband about buying a car the other day. So
that's so funny. And then after that, so we moved on. So that's in middle school. So as you get into high school, that's a huge transition for everybody, right? Like, what was that like? Was it a hard time for you?
So like, it would have been like 7th grade, somewhere in there. We just had like a clique of friends, so it was actually like, I mean, all my friends from then, as odd as it is, I mean, we're still really good friends. I mean, like we have the same conversations and same laughter. I mean, the same style from that time till now. And it's just crazy because everybody's grown up. So my like high school transition, it was more fun than not fun,
So now you're just with the same people. You just all have beards and babies.
Yeah, beards, kids. Yeah.
Was there ever anybody like in that time period? Did you ever lose anybody or anything in your life?
Yeah. I mean, we had. There's been several. I mean, it's just kind of sporadically, but nobody. I mean, it's all been really close family. Never really like any super close friends or, there's been friends that have passed away, but, like everybody that's been generally really close to me other than the exception of a few, family members, is still here, fortunately.
I mean, was there a specific family member that was harder to lose, that maybe made a change in your life personally?
My grandpa Gehrke, a few years back.
And what happened to him?
Just age, being stubborn. I mean, that'd be the best way to put it. He was a Vietnam veteran, so he didn't really like to listen to anybody. So,
and I mean, like, did you go through what were you going through at the time?
Trying to raise 2 kids and excel my career at the time. So, there wasn't like that last few years of life for him. I was getting really involved in like work you know, so I didn't get to spend as much time over there as I probably should have, you know, so that one probably hit me a little bit hard. My grandma Pat, same thing, a few years ago, same scenario, you know what I mean, very close to me, and then you get to where, like, you get married, have kids, and it's like, you know, it's such a cliche thing to say, but you just get so wrapped up in trying to get what you need out of life that you kind of stop worrying, and it makes you rethink stuff, you know.
So I mean, so you get through high school, and you get through all that, and we all have grandparents, and that's a tough one. But then, at some point, you met your wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was in high school.
Yeah.
Along with your other bearded friends.
Yeah.
You don't have a beard, Cassie. I love you. Anyway, sorry. But so how was that? Like, what was that like when you first met your wife?
Pretty crazy. You know, I asked her to go on a date, and she bailed on me. So I kind of like hashed it on, like, oh, whatever, you know. I've always had a mindset, like, if somebody doesn't want to talk to me, then, like, I'm not going to lose sleep unless it's like one of my super close friends or family, you know, then everybody gets pissed off, you know, like, why aren't you actually talking to me, you know. But so I kind of brushed it off and didn't think anything about it. And then I actually got grounded for getting in trouble in high school, you know. So I get grounded, and the only way I could go on a date was to take my little brother. So I had to take my little brother on our first date because my mom just didn't trust me to, like, breathe, let alone go on a date, you know. So I take my little brother.
So she didn't get pregnant that night?
No.
No, okay.
It was like a week later. No, it was way after that. So I take my little brother, and I paid for the movie tickets, and actually fell asleep during the entire movie. But it was Harry Potter. I wasn't really, you know, I was 18. Like, I'm not into Harry Potter anymore. You know, I had to grow up. You know, like, so I fall asleep in the middle of the movie with my little brother and Cassie, and we leave. Well, like, we're going to Waffle House to eat. Well, I give my brother the cash, so he loses his wallet. So after we order like $30-something worth of food, I had to ask her to pay for the food, you know. So it's pretty epic.
She's still with him today, folks.
Yeah.
Just surprisingly, but that's pretty good story to start out with. You just let's say you lost the money, but
no, I did not. My brother did. I did not.
What a better excuse, right? I gave it to my brother. It's like my dog ate my homework.
No, he was freaking out. That was the funny thing. He was doing the whole panic shuffle.
That's good stuff. But no, that's cool, man. That's so crazy that you guys met. You were 18 when you met.
17.
Or 17. Okay, well, that's very cool. And then, so you decided not to go to college.
No, I did go to college.
Or you did.
Yes, and then I dropped out of college.
Okay.
It just wasn't my thing. You know what I mean? It just didn't feel right at the time. Ton of ridicule for not going to college, you know, from everybody. Like, your life's over, you know. I was like, no, I'll be good. Like, I'm not worried about it as much as everybody else was.
What were you going for?
Construction technology.
Construction tech. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Is that how to make a digital technician?
I think it was like a ploy to get you to pay for a degree in the long run. Like, you're still going to do construction. You just get to walk in and manage it somehow.
I've known you for 10 years. I've never seen you build anything. So it's probably a good idea for you to get out of that class. But you moved on from that. And that's about, how you were 19 or something about that?
Yeah, 19, somewhere in there.
And then what'd you start doing?
I was working, actually, technically 3 jobs when I was going to college. And I was working at Hardee's. I was a biscuit maker, you know. So you had to get there at like, it was like 2:30 in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, the worst possible shift to be 19 years old and like have to work. Like, you know, because like you'd go out and like hang out with people or do stuff at night. And, like, you couldn't just get up at 2 in the morning. Like, it sucked.
So they do make fresh biscuits every morning?
Every single morning.
Hey, we're breaking the news right here. This
Yeah.
is good stuff. I mean, I always thought they're just frozen stuff. They just pop
No,
out.
it's like a 8-hour shift to make biscuits for people. It's terrible.
I mean, they're good, but damn, they're not that good. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get up until 2 o'clock in the morning. What were the other jobs you had?
I worked at Randy's Drive-In in Coral Junction
Oh yeah,
and Babe's Drive-In.
and babes.
Yeah. So like I talked to him and like, hey, I can work like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday here, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday here in the afternoon or during the day, just to like try and work as much as I can and make as much as I could.
Crazy. It's like the same exact job at both places. I
Yeah.
mean, like a lot of the same stuff. Like
Yeah, one was like way more calm and like it was a good like level of like of shifts, I guess, you know.
Little shout out to Randy's and Babes. We love those places. I think we still go to those places.
I went to Hardee's today.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't giving a shout out to the big franchise. I mean, sponsor us. You know, that's how you get it. Anyway. But so that's cool. So you're going through that, and then okay, from those 3 jobs, let's see.
I got fired from Randy's
Uh-oh.
by my wife.
Oh yeah.
And if you ask anybody there, they will vouch for me. Like, I promise you that she fired me.
And you guys were together at the time?
Yeah, living together. Same house.
No.
I got fired because
I was gonna say, can you be honest about why she fired you?
Yes. Well, I worked at, so long story short, I quit working at Hardee's. I called the boss and I was like, it's like 2 a.m. I was like, hey, I'm quitting. Like, I'm not coming into work today, you know? It's like one of the worst ways to leave a job. Like, I shouldn't ever put that out in the public. I'd tell anybody that story because it's Hardee's.
It's too late now. It's out there.
So I call him and I'm like, hey, I'm not coming into work. So I sleep till like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And it's just weird like how life works. Like, I drove by Blue Beacon at some point in my life and seen a now hiring sign. So I wake up, that was the first place I drove to, go to Blue Beacon, they hire me on the spot. I was like, well, I want to go home and go back to bed, you know, because I'm already off today because I quit my job. So I quit Hardee's, the whole 9 yards, and go work at Blue Beacon. And I worked there for a while, but I could never get along with the guy that ran the Blue Beacon. Like, he was just an ass. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Like, everybody has those bosses where they just suck, and he sucked. Like,
now, what year was that roughly?
That'd have been like 2011, 12, somewhere in there. No, it'd have been before that. So like the end of 2010 to like 2011, about a year or so.
So if you know the boss that was there around that time, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. I just didn't like him as a boss. Like, I don't care if anybody hears that. I'm way past working at Blue Beacon right now. I'm not gonna go work at Blue Beacon again.
Throw his resume out. All right.
Yeah.
You were taken. We're not worried about that. But you good. Okay, so you left there and
my operations manager, this is why I say that about the boss at the time. Like, if you weren't hanging out with this guy, like, he didn't care who you were. And I was like, well, I don't really like him, so I'm not going to go hang out with him. Like, I didn't like his personality, you know.
Well, we're going to hear a lot more about stuff like that.
Yeah.
In the future years of your life right here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was present for that, so I've seen a lot of that.
So actually the operations manager told me to go apply at Crossroads Chevrolet to detail cars because, you know, I was very detail oriented and he knew I didn't click with the boss. You know, this is like his second in command. It's like, hey man, you're probably never going to get promoted. Like, you should take this job. It'll pay you more money. You know, go do it. I'm like, thanks, you know. Go in, get the job, start detailing cars. Well, this is the time where I was working detailing cars and working at Randy's. So like work 8 to 5 and then 5 to close at Randy's and then start over, you know. So I'd leave the dealership at 5 and drive to Carl Junction. So I'd show up at like 5:15, 5:20. Well, everybody's pissed off because they're, you know, 18 and don't have any bills to pay other than me.
Right.
So they're like, hey, I had to do something extra for you for 20 minutes. And I'm like, I will never do that to anybody the rest of my life because they're just assholes. I mean, like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, Everybody knows who I'm talking about. Like, it's just one of those things where it just wasn't cool. Like, grow up, you know. I have bills to pay. Like, you're still living with your parents, you know. So it pissed me off, but everything happens for a reason, you know. So.
And so that's about the time Zayden came along, right?
Yeah, right in that time frame. Had Zayden.
So he was doing naughty things. Apparently, he had a baby.
Yeah, I wasn't always working, you know. So we, had Zayden, and then.
Now, what was that like? I mean, tell us about that experience. Like, I mean, when you're at the hospital and all that. Like,
it was a pretty good. I mean, it was short-lived in the hospital. Really, it was a quick birth. I mean, like, we left. Cassie was in the typical pain for a few days, you know. So it was just really a life shock for me. Like, oh, you have a kid now, you know. Like, you do like baby showers and all the stuff, and everybody's like, I'm so excited you're having a kid, and you're like, you have no clue what to expect. Like, you see it on TV, but it's not like it's totally different once you actually have a kid, you know.
but I mean, was there a feeling like your life changed when you held him? Like,
Absolutely.
First home, like,
Yeah, I was like, I've got 18 years till he graduates high school. So, you know, which is what my dad told me growing up. He's like, 3 more years. I'm like, okay. I guess I'll move out in 3 years. Like, got to start planning for it, you know?
Oh man, that's funny. No, I just ask because I know it's such a big deal, and I know your kids are a huge part of your life, and you give them a lot of the things that you may not have had or whatever as a kid, and I know personally that feeling. So having one and how that changes you as a person, and did that change your professional life at the same time? Like, did that make you see things differently? Because I know you took a different path.
I was, like we had Zayden in 2011.
Right.
So I started detailing cars about that same time. You know, so I was trying to make more money than, you know, I was used to. You know, you can't make $6-7 an hour and have a kid, like, have a kid well, in my opinion, you know, like, there's stuff everybody wants or needs, or Christmas, and like, you want the best for your kid, you know. So that's about the time I got in the car business. It was about that, you know. Zayden was, man, he wasn't even a year old whenever I was in the car business, you know, or when I got to where I was selling cars. So, and that's a whole wild thing too. Like, that first year of my kid's life, like, that was a huge thing for me, you know. We were like, I went from making money, and we decided to move to this house, 3-bed, 2-bath house. I mean, it got tough, like, trying to pay rent, you know. We're having a kid. We had a roommate that lived with us, you know, and you know, it was fun living there before we got pregnant. So we got pregnant, and long story short, we couldn't afford to live there. So we had to move in with my mother-in-law. And it was technically a 1-bedroom house with like a Harry Potter wing to like for the second bedroom, you know. So we had a newborn, like, moving out of our house we couldn't afford. And I was like, I got to try something different, you know. Like, you just have that change of heart, you know, where it's like, okay, nobody else is going to raise this kid. Like, you've got family members, and everybody always wants to help with kids, you know. I always want to help with kids. Like, if I see someone that needs help and they have kids, like, I'll do whatever I can. Midnight, 2 a.m., it doesn't matter when it is, you know. So I really had to, like, get it together, you know. So that's like that time of rock bottom financially for me. Like, you're just down, you know. Like, you don't really see anybody that's like super broke and they're just excited every day. Like, they're not happy, you know. Like, they know they need to be in a better situation, and I was at that point, you know. And it wasn't a problem anybody else could solve, you know. Me being broke or whatever the situation was, like, nobody can fix that but you. Like, you've got to handle your own life, you know. So I had to get all of that figured out, like, within a 3-month window, you know. It was really my time frame on it. So that's when I started selling cars, October 12.
And what was it that like, obviously, I mean, that's a huge point in time for every man's life, and I mean, unfortunately, a lot of men don't get to that point where they understand I've got to do better. a lot of times they do something worse. I mean, obviously, and that's the point where I met you, where I got to meet you in that part of your story. But what was it that brought you into selling cars from detail? Like, I mean, how did you?
There's a couple things, you know, like you would hear. I'd be detailing a car, and the salespeople. I mean, like in a dealership, if you don't know, like what you do. I mean, that's where I met you, was a dealership, you know. And whenever you work at a dealership, it's a family outside of a family. Like you spend a ton of hours with everybody. I mean, I spent more time with you than I have some of my closest family members, you know, because you work long shifts and you do whatever is necessary for the customer. I mean, like that really is, if you're in the game and you're really in the game, you do whatever is necessary. I mean, 24/7. You know, I mean, I know you've answered calls at midnight for customers, maybe even 2 a.m. in the morning, like, hey, my car's broke down. People don't see that side of it, you know, so.
It's the sales side, yeah. A lot of people don't know.
They're like, they're just, you know, they're a classic car dealer. I don't trust them, you know, whatever. Like, you're going to trust us when you need us at 3 a.m.
But I mean,
like, you know, like, sorry.
And was there like an ad or something? Because you just detailed at Crossroads.
Yeah.
And then you just came over to Ford to sell.
Well, yeah, the salespeople at the dealership, they'd always come back and be like, oh, I'm making money. And I'm like, man, I'm not. You know, like, I'm making decent money, but I'm not making like what you just said you made. You know, I'm like, there's no way. Like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, everybody thinks, and if they don't say it out loud, they're probably lying to themselves. But like, you know, when you're better at something than somebody, like you can just, you can tell. And some of the guys that were selling cars at the dealership I was at, I'm like, I could probably do way better than they can, you know? And actually, Roger Williams, that was whenever he had left Fletcher, and he came over to Crossroads. So he was working there, and I didn't really meet him when I was working there at all. I don't even remember him, to be completely honest. But all the salespeople, I remember we had a big meeting on how to we need to hire more salespeople because Roger was there for such a short amount of time and left, and like 5 salespeople from the dealership followed him back to Fletcher. Well, they called me, you know, I'll never forget the phone call. Darren Mills actually called me. And he said, hey, you need to come over here and try and sell cars. Like, I don't know if they were getting, like, what the situation was, or if they just asked, like, hey, do you know anybody that works hard, that wants to sell cars? I don't know. Or maybe he just, out of the blue, called me. I've never asked him, you know. I've known him for years, and I've never asked him. But they called me, and I went over to Ford to, like, go sell cars, you know, and interviewed with Jeff Woods, Roger, and Clint, you know, Clint Holland. And it was funny, you know, because Clint was like, do you want a job? You know, I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay. You know, like Clint was just, he's such a fast-paced person. If you don't know him, like, he's just, you know, he's always doing something. Like, he really taught you how to just, like, oh, you got to work that hard. Like, that's the expectation. You got to run around like this guy and do stuff all day, you know. So, you know, then Roger was like, hey, if these guys recommend you, you can sell cars here. I'm like, there's a catch. Like, salespeople must be flying out here, you know. And then Jeff Woods was like, I go through those, and then Jeff's like actually trying to interview me, you know. He was so funny. He's like, how much money do you want to make? I was like $400 a week. And he told me, and he's told me this for years, like, I almost didn't hire you because I thought you weren't hungry. I was like, well, you never told me how much car salesman made, you know? So, like, I was just thinking of what I needed to make, you know? So that's when it all started right there.
And not to make it sound like they're all rich, because they're not. There's plenty of broke salespeople out there. But no, like, I mean, I like to, I always thought about it, like, when I got in the car business, it was like, I had done everything I could do in my other jobs, and I was working 3 jobs, kind of like you were, and then I'm like, I need to do something better. And it's kind of like, I think it's just like when a girl decides to become a stripper or something. It's like, fuck it, you know, like, I guess I'll try it, you know. It's never somebody's number one dream, I don't think, to be a car salesman, you know, because they're so hated and stuff. But I remember, like, I was at a low point in my life when I went and tried to do it. And then I just remember, like, the building, everything was so, it was so big and so large. And
yeah, it's like the White House.
I felt so small, you know.
Yeah.
Did you feel that?
Yes, I'm like, we're gonna sell a ton of cars because this building's huge.
It's so crazy. And being around
It's just
brand
like
new
a
cars.
fascia, you know what I mean? Fake wall.
I mean, I think, like most people, I think when I started selling cars, like my car was 17 years old or something like that.
Oh.
Like, I'd never been in a new car, you know.
Yeah, we had one car. Like, I was getting dropped off to work.
Yes,
You know what
yes.
I mean? Like, hopefully I'll make it, you know? Like,
It's so funny how everybody starts that way, I think. And it's always like a bad part of your life or a frustrating, hard part of your life. And you start out there and everything is new and you're in this like building that seems great. And all these people seem like they're making millions. I mean, which obviously we all know that's not true. They all don't make millions, but they do pretty well.
I'd be retired by now.
Yeah.
I promise you.
And most all of them exaggerate. So like everybody, all them guys were over at the other dealership when you were in detail and they were telling you, I made 30 grand last month and stuff like that, which was
I'm like, I just need to make like $4,000. I'd be rich.
I'd be so happy.
Yeah.
I remember, because it was like that when I went to Ford. Everybody got $10,000 checks, and that was before the bailout or during the bailout and stuff. So that changed real quick. I got my first paycheck and it was like $600. I was like, why didn't this say $10,000? Like, you know, it totally was crazy. But yeah, man, it was just such a wild time. And I just remember the brand new cars being so cool and dynamic and just like, these are amazing. Like, why aren't people buying these? Like, I just couldn't understand it. I'm like, we should have lines of people coming in, you know? And that started moving. But I just remember that excitement. And I remember you being there, and I remember your excitement and enthusiasm, and you were just happy all the damn time. I mean,
yeah, I was making more than $400 a week.
I mean, knowing you, that's just who you are now. But I mean, do you remember how excited you were about it?
Oh, you guys would make fun of me. Like, you guys, yeah, everybody there was like, "Oh, you're just being competitive." I'm like, "No, I'm excited. like, I can do anything now. You know, like you can do whatever you want."
You were, but you came in with a completely different attitude than a lot of guys have. Which another one of our best friends came in and he's like, "I'm going to be the boss in 6 months and fire everybody." Like his first day. And I mean, like, he's done really well for himself too, but I mean, he's not in the position that you're in. And I think part of that is that you came in very humble and you were just like, you know, I want to learn everything and I want to help people. And you were smiling all the time. It was infectious. Your happiness made everybody around you happy. And I think you still carry that today. I think that's why your dealership is doing good and people are still happy that are around you. Like I walk in, like I go to all the dealerships in town. And so I see some of them, you know, everyone has a different vibe when you go into it. And I know when I go to where you are like everybody's happy. Everybody wants to talk and everybody seems positive and motivated to do things. And I think that all comes from you, man. And I think you've done a great job with that.
A lot of it, like at the store I'm at now, you know, the store we're building is we don't allow negativity. Like it sounds crazy, but like you get ridiculed if you're negative. Like nobody wants to be around negativity that's at the dealership, you know. And I've worked at a ton of different stores with a ton of different really good car guys, you know, but you get the mix where somebody's just not, they're so against the counterculture. Like they want to do things their way whenever 20 other people want to do it the right way. Like get out, you know, like you don't need that. Nobody needs that person in their store. It's like me personally, I'm very blessed. Like my entire management staff, like there's nobody bad on our team. You know, you can have a conversation with everybody in the store. And that's, you know, that was like my biggest goal. Like if I'm going to do this, it's going to be with people that make everybody feel good, you know, because I know you've worked in stores and it was always a rolling joke. Like, oh, new manager, like you'll be gone in 6 months, you know, like that's always been you know, unless you're good, unless you're a car guy, like you're really good, you're benefiting the team, you stay. And like people are like, yeah, they move managers a lot. Well, like they're not the right people for that store, you know, so it makes sense.
I mean, like I know you to be a very caring person, and I know you care about other people and what they want to do and help other people succeed, and you'll be successful. What would you say to somebody that's out there where you were? They're 19, they're 20 years old, they've got a kid, and they're thinking about maybe following in your path a little bit. I mean, what would you?
I mean, not necessarily like my path. Like follow your own path, you know. But it's one of those deals where if you want something bad enough, nobody, like, no matter what anybody says to you, like, you can't do it, you can't whatever, like, ignore everything. Like, ignore what anybody can say to drag you down. It may be absolutely nothing to me, but it could be something major to you that the same person says. Ignore them, you know. And it's hard to do that at times. Like, you know, I've had owners, you know, like, they will call and cuss you out and, like, rip your head off. I mean, over nothing. Like, if you own the business and that situation happened, like, nothing. You know, everybody's had that boss that sucks. Everybody's had, like, whatever. Like, if you don't like something, change it, you know. Like, and that'd be probably the biggest thing I could tell somebody is, you know, there's thousands of ways to make money, but you have to find your way, you know. Like, what I'm doing now may not be my optimal way to make money, you know. I don't know. Like, the future's unknown, but right now it's the best way for me. Like, I mean, it's a good business, you know. So, I mean, the sky is the limit no matter what you do if you work hard enough to do it.
What are you, like, susceptible to? So, like, if there is a kid out there that's maybe in detail right now, he's a young guy, you know, and he wants to come and he wants to come sell cars for you. Like, what could he say that you just can't say no to? You have to hire.
It's usually the one that gets me, and it's worked out, you know. It's not so much what they say, it's their reactions. Like, people wouldn't normally hire somebody that is shy, you know, or quiet. But usually people that are, like, you know, in their 20s, 30s, if they're shy and quiet, like, they'd never get hired, you know. I've got a few salespeople right now that are just lighting the world on fire. Like, they are the most, they work, you know. I mean, they work. And all of them were very quiet in their interview, you know. And I'll ask them questions like, what do you want? And they're like, I want to make money. But somebody that's shy like that, they really do want to make money. It's usually the people that are more vocal. They really kind of annoy me, to be honest. Like, they come in arrogant and they've never sold cars.
Yeah.
Like, you've never done it, so be humble about it, you know. The people that are really quiet, though, I mean, I've had amazing luck with them. Amazing. I mean, I have a guy that's been selling cars right now since August, September, right in there. That's averaging right at almost 20 cars a month right now. This year, I mean, we're a brand new dealership too. So to me, that was just like, you know. And when he started, he was at a rock bottom spot, you know, like in his life. Like, he told everybody, and we were all like, hey, shut up, your life's gonna get better, you know. And now he's like, I'm on top of the world, you know. So to me, that's a great feeling, because we get to show somebody how to make money. You know, if you listen, you make money in the car business. Like, if you talk, all you're doing is just bumping your gums.
It's very much like the give a man a fish, or teach him how to fish. You know?
Right.
And I mean, you're teaching somebody a way to make a living for the rest of their life and to feed their family.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that feeling that you get from helping them, that's the amazing feeling I think everybody looks for. I mean, I think that's really cool. But going from there, you were in sales anyway, and then you got into, you had a quick path. I mean, you led a really fast path. You sold cars for what?
14 months.
Yeah, it was just over a year. And then you went into finance?
Yeah, at the Ford store.
Yeah, okay. And then, I mean, was that different for you? Was that something you enjoyed, or was that?
It was, but like that last little stint of me selling cars, like I was on fire. And, you know, like I see so many salespeople that become managers, and then they're like, I'm going back to sales, and they're like, I should have never been a manager.
Yeah.
And that's never really been my mindset, you know. Like, I'm trying to go up, you know, eventually where I own a dealership or two, you know. That's a goal I'll hit. I mean, I'm not going to stop until I do it, but you'd always hear that kind of stuff, you know. But for me, it was one of the best moves I made, you know. And I almost didn't do it, you know. But then I did, you know. So it was a great move on my part.
And then from finance, you got into sales manager. Right?
Yes.
And where was that at?
The Hyundai dealership in Joplin.
Now, do you feel bad about selling people those terrible cars, or?
No. I
You're
mean,
a sales manager. You heard that.
I mean, if you want something like, I mean, this may be the most open and honest thing I've ever said publicly about the car business, but if you buy a car, you had all the time in the world to do the research on it, you know? And every dealership, every single one, no matter the owner, the make, model, they will let you take that car and go get it inspected. Like, they'll let you do whatever you want. Take it for the weekend. Make sure it's the right car for you. Like, they'll let you do that. But the amount of people that don't do that, it blows my mind to this day, you know? It's like, you sold us a bad car. It's like, you know, we put it through the shop, we fixed it. Like, there's so many things, like, they don't sell junk cars. They'll get sued. You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy. All of it's crazy.
Was there, all right, well, we kind of jumped right to the end of your life a little bit, but I'd say, like, was there ever, like, a point where you were, because, I mean, kind of the point of doing these life stories is for me to talk about, or for people to talk about their hardest times and how they got past those hardest times to live the great lives that they're living now, and that maybe somebody else that's going through a hard time can see that, and maybe they'll take the hope and not go down that road, you know. So was there anything, like, a real hard time that you're open with discussing that you went through or you overcame?
I mean, like, a lot of life for me has been hard, you know, like, I think I deal with more daily struggles than I do, like, long-term struggles, you know, so, like, I've always steered towards the mindset of, like, I guess that some of that stuff just doesn't matter, you know, like a big issue to somebody would be like, you know, hey, I've got to take my kid to school. Where, like, to me, that's like, okay, 3 minutes, I can be there, I'm on to the next thing, you know. And I always, like, my day, I mean, I write out what I need to do in the day, so I never really deal with, like, I try and knock out daily issues and not worry about, like, bigger issues, you know.
Damn it, I really want to see you cry.
I'm not gonna
think
cry.
it's going to happen today.
I've been through too much at this point to cry, so, like, I'm not gonna cry.
Oh, no, it's good. But,
Like, if something happened to my dog while I'm talking to you, I'd probably cry. But other than that, I'm not crying.
Okay, you had a dog die when you were younger, right?
No, they'd like well, I had one dog die actually.
It disappeared.
No,
you
usually
committed suicide.
usually my dad was like, "We're not getting a dog," you know, like we couldn't have pets because he didn't want pets. We never had a cat because he was allergic to cats. Like, nobody knows if he's allergic to cats.
So you're invisible and pets were dead. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the dog I got when I was a kid, like, passed away like within the last year or two. You know, so this dog was like 100 years old. Or as you'd say, like 5, you know, so, I mean, that was the dog we had growing up, and he just passed away. You know, he lived with my parents, so, just an old beagle.
You're just giving me the hardest time. It's like being a cop, and I'm trying to get something
I'm
out
not
of you.
You're just not. I'm telling you everything I can tell you.
And I really want more to come out.
This video probably won't even go up.
I want everybody to know. I'm going to put the video out, but I want everybody to know he has been through some hard times. He's not talking about it, but, you know, eventually we'll get somebody to crack. But, you know, I want people to know you can overcome a lot of things, and he has, and I have, and a lot of other people have, you know. You can get past those things and get onto a bright place where he's at now. You moved on from detail guy. I mean, in the car business, you know, detail guys are referred to as the bottom, which is always drove me crazy because they're the hardest working people in the business. But that's where he started out. And so I think having that respect for those guys and respect for guys that are in levels below him, I think has made him so successful. But you take those and you're going from detail, salesman, to finance manager, to sales manager, to GM, to executive manager. That's insane, dude. What is that? Like, I mean, is there more responsibilities than just a general manager?
It is. So, like, the easiest way for me to explain it, and I had a good conversation with a really good car guy the other day, and he said, man, he goes, you know, I was on a conference call with him, trying to look at a vendor for our BDC at the dealership. And he calls me after the conference call, and he's like, hey, he's like, I know you're 28. He goes, but you're a real general manager. You know, like, you're really running a dealership.
Right.
He goes, because, like, a lot of the guys in town, they're puppets.
Right.
Like, they haven't, an 80-year-old guy telling them like, put stickers on cars. Like,
you're gonna get a phone call from every GM in town tonight.
that's fine. Like, I'm not worried about it. It's one of those deals where he said that to me, and I know those guys. They're great car guys. Like,
Right.
there's nothing they do wrong. They all have successful dealerships. A lot of them have been idols. I may have differences with a lot of them, but like, that's because like one of them said I didn't have an A-type personality, and the GM I was under at the time lost it. Like, I mean, he didn't freak out about anything, but he's like, this guy didn't even fucking know you, like going off, and I'm like, okay, whatever, So, and it was just funny, but you always hear stuff like that where those little comments from people push you, So I heard this from this guy, and it just kind of made me laugh, saying I'm a real GM. Like, it hit me. Like, I've been doing it for a while now, and I was like, wow, like, that was a good compliment, and I take compliments terrible. Like, somebody tells me a compliment, I'm like, cool, like, let's keep going. And it's always been like a problem with me. Like, I can't accept compliments. I don't know. That was a good one though.
I remember, I'm just thinking to myself, because as salespeople, we were both salespeople together, and when you're newer and you're a salesman and you think about your general manager, a lot of people are very afraid to approach him, talk to him, they just have that, I guess even I felt that way, when you first start.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's managers in between you kind of buffer you,
Right.
So you're kind of like, am I not supposed to talk to them and that kind of thing? Like, how does that feel to be on the other side of that,
Man, well, like, my first GM was Roger Williams, so I'm like, as cowboy as you could get in the car business was like, I'm like, wow, this is how you sell cars. And to this day, everything we got taught back then by Roger is like, it's probably like the car business is always changing, and it was so valid to this day. I talk to him like once a week now, and he may be the only other person that really runs a dealership that I talk to. Like, I trust his advice, to this day, because it got me where I'm at. So my goal has always been like, give out good advice, and if people listen to it, like Roger, we go through these meetings and we probably remember more about Lynn Hickey Dodge than Roger Williams. Like, he forgets all the little stories, but like, I remember the bazooka and Evil Knievel, the whole 9 yards. And I'd always hear those stories, and a lot of the guys, he always called it the R&D department, the Research and Development Committee. They'd go outside and smoke cigarettes on the corner, and they would just complain, So he's like, don't ever go near those guys. He'd always tell me, and I'm like, okay, So like, people would be like, hey, come here and talk to us, I'm like, hey, come get some candy or something, We're like, no.
I was president of that club, I think.
Yeah, you were. Your shoes were super glued to the corner.
Oh no, that's so funny. But yes, it didn't have to be him, but did him or did anybody else, as far as managers, was there somebody that really said something to you, or kind of showed you a certain path that made you decide that this is the path that you wanted to take? Or?
It was, I think the biggest thing for me was, so I started in October of 12, and Fletcher Auto Group always does a huge Christmas party.
Right.
Like, huge Christmas party. This is the craziest goal. I only said it and I'll get to the point where I said it, but where I told everybody this was my goal. But we went to the Fletcher Christmas party, and every general manager got up there. And like, this thing is huge. Like, it's not like 20 people, it's hundreds of people in this room. Like, they all sell cars, and it's a huge auto group. So I go in, and every general manager's up there, and at the point in time, it was actually a few years after that Elick was like the youngest GM at the time. He was like 30. I think it was right at 30. And they announced it a few years after this Christmas party. But, I was sitting there, and I was sitting at a table with Mike Ford and Ron Murray. Because I didn't know anybody in the car business. I was like, they wouldn't allow me on a golf cart in December. So, like, I was still that new, So I left that Christmas party, and I was like, I want to be one of those guys up there talking. Well, then I figured out they ran the dealerships, you know? Like after the second or third guy, like this guy runs Toyota. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, that was my goal that night was like, I'm going to be up there talking about it. So like this last year, we had a Christmas party with Skyway, and it was my first speech as a general manager, you know? And I had like a whole speech that I wrote that night in 2012. And I was like, I'm not reading this off, you know, like it just wasn't happening. So, you know, that was a big goal, was doing a speech as a general manager. I got to do it in the same casino, but with a different auto group, you know, so which is cool for me. Like, you know, it's way better than what I had planned, you know, getting up in front of 100 and some people. Like what we're doing now is just incredible for the manpower we have, you know. Incredible right now, so it's a lot better feeling.
It was funny that you were talking about Roger. It was like the king of the one-liners. But I mean, like,
yeah.
Is there a one line? Is there a quote? You know, that stayed with you that you that's held out.
If you aren't talking to a customer, you're currently unemployed. Like that one has resonated in my head. Like I would get where I'd make some phone calls or something, or you know, do something, and then I'd sit there for a minute and I'd start talking to somebody, and then, you know, now I've got it where I've got a couple people that'll text me that, and I'm like, they could send that text at the perfect timing. I'm like, you're right, I gotta get back to work, you know? Like, because it's so true. I mean, it is so true in any sales job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you make money off of talking to customers. Like, so talk to more people.
So I need you to buy a house, or basically I'm unemployed too.
Yeah.
That's a great one, man. But okay, so that's all lit us up. I mean, I guess it's got us up, unless you want to go over your transition over to the company you're with now.
Yeah, that was kind of a weird deal. You know, I went through a few different little hurdles right there, but you know, I always, you know, stick to what you feel. I mean, that's how I had to write it out. You know. I was with Fletcher for a long time, for 6 years, you know, right at 6 years. And it wasn't, you know, we weren't jiving. Like it wasn't clicking for us anymore between me and the higher ups, you know. I didn't feel like I was treated fair, you know. So I leave there, go to Wilbur Auto Group, help them for a while, and then get offered the job with the Landers, you know. And both of those organizations, like I was with Fletcher for so long that you think this is the car business, like what I'm currently doing is how everybody sells cars. You know, then you go to 2 other auto groups and you're like, wow, maybe this is how you sell cars, you know, like both of those auto groups had their own system, you know, so where I'm at now, like I know what everybody does, you know, so.
Have you kind of taken a little bit from every place and kind of made.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I'm not going to give up our secrets.
Right.
But, like, we definitely, like, did take some stuff from a little bit everywhere. And a lot of my guys, they've worked at different places, you know. They've worked for different auto groups. And the coolest thing, like, our owners, they want you to be successful. And, you know, they're in a very big, large business. And it's just like, they all had to figure out what they did because they started this business, you know, and they really stand behind that. Like, you're the experts, you know what to do. Call us, you know, before there's a mistake. Like, but you're not going to make a mistake if you're doing it the right way, you know. And they've built their empire off of that. So, like when I interviewed with them, whenever they were acquiring their first dealership, you know, they're like, you know, what can you bring to the table? And I was like, I'm not gonna fail, you know, like, so they've let me really do what we need to do. And, you know, like the last month of the previous ownership, like it did 17 units. Like that dealership sold 17 cars. Last month with coronavirus, everything like that, I mean, we set the all-time store record. I mean, it's just like.
During the outbreak.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
It's insane.
I mean, everybody that knew you, I mean, I think we all knew, when you came to the Ford dealership, we all knew you were going to be successful. I mean, I heard a couple of the car dogs that were like, I think the kid's too nice, you know. But, I mean, other than that, like, nobody's ever had a bad thing to say about you. You've been great, and I think everybody's seen you were going to be successful. We knew it would happen, and You've done it, dude. I'm proud of you, brother.
Appreciate it.
I just got a couple of questions. I would say, I mean, we didn't talk about your childhood as much as we should have, but I really wanted to get more into you crying. But since you did it the way you did me dirty, but since it's happened the way it happened, I'm sure you kind of thought about your life a little bit. And looking back upon your life, if today was to be your last day on earth, would you be proud of what you've done?
Yes.
Very good. And then I guess the last one would be is there anything, I wanted to do these videos and really get as much life as I could and put them out there so that way kids, your family, whoever, when they grow up, they can see this. And, internet's forever as far as we know. So, I mean, is there anything you would like to tell to a loved one or to your kids or to your friends or to whoever out there?
Just like, a lot of the stuff I do is for everybody else. I mean, it really is, whether some people see like, a lot of people will complain like, oh, you're always working or you're always doing something, but it's like, I've got a personal goal to hit, so, and a lot of that is inspired by, like my mom, my dad. I mean, there's so many, that'd be mostly who I'd probably give a big shout out to would be them, like that's why I do what I do, is watching them work so hard growing up, like they still do it. Like they still work that hard, and they enjoy life. So, I mean, it's just, they've shown me a way more than anybody else has to make a living, be a good person. So
if there was one thing that you could change throughout your whole life, just one moment, one thought, one decision, one action, anything you could think of?
Probably trying to take off a little bit more from work. Like, seriously.
Really? You work constantly. What are you talking about?
Oh, I know, but like, there's just stuff that I've just missed that I shouldn't have missed, because of like a bad boss. Like, I mean, you work for those people that are like, no, you can't leave. Like, and you're like, well, I have to work, like I have to have a job, and you're comfortable with your job, so you don't do it, but don't take that as a, like, you have to do what you need to do outside of work, That'd be the one thing I'd change.
Work for the right people.
Work for the right people and put your foot down. Like, hey, family comes first. Where these are the bosses that say family doesn't come first. They don't actually say it. They just say you got to work while they're hanging out with their family. Yeah. And they don't see that side of it because they don't stoop down to that level, Have a humble boss. I've got a very humble boss now, and it's like, I don't have to call them if I need to take off time. Like, you're gonna do what you need to do. That's how they act, and it's just very nice. I mean, it goes through the whole store like that. So,
just another point of what makes you great at what you do, bro. Thank you very much for coming on.
Awesome.
See you guys later. If anybody else has a great story, holler at us. Yep.